All right, we're going to Dr. Paul Craig Roberts, syndicated columnist, former Wall Street Journal editor, and, of course, former head of policy department of Treasury under Reagan. Here in a moment, just briefly finishing up with the birth certificate. I've not been a birther in the 3 years this has been out. I have interviewed some guests. I've looked at it. They're definitely covering up Obama's past. His mother's definitely CIA and above with the big foundations. He definitely had the name Barry Soetoro. It's weird. But the fact that they did release this new one and it's been analyzed and it's clearly been shown to be fake is amazing. And Dr. Jerome Corsi is on tomorrow. And we've got that report up on prisonplanet.com and Infowars.com. Birther bombshell. Corsi to release evidence proving Obama certificate as fraudulent. A fraudulent composite. We've got a video in the next few hours going up on Infowars.com and prisonplanet.com, a 10-minute report detailing the full spectrum of this information. And Joseph Ferris saying he's going to have to sue Esquire now because it wasn't a parody. They didn't say it was a parody. They didn't add it with satire. They came out in a serious report and said they interviewed Farah and he was recalling the book and giving people's money back, which is economic espionage and a serious, serious attack, which shows they're desperate. And ABC News reports the White House is now planning to run on the birth certificate issue and putting out campaign T-shirts to be sold to raise money. So this issue is not going away. I wish it would, because I want to look at the issues with Obama. He might have been born on Mars, for all I care. At the end of the day, this guy's continuing the neocon agenda. We'll also get Dr. Paul Craig Roberts' take on Obama coming out and pushing all these revolutions and saying Israel needs to go back to its 67 borders. Ron Paul's out saying that there is a move to try to occupy Pakistan. I had General Gould on a few days ago. U.S. helicopter attacked an emplacement over there. It is certainly deteriorating very, very quickly. So that's all coming up. Now, the main reason that we have Dr. Paul Craig Roberts with us today is the whole Dominique Strauss-Kahn situation. And in national polls in France, fully 60% or higher, the lowest poll, 60%, believe this is a setup. Kahn was set in polls to handily defeat and was going to be running as the leader of the Socialist Party against Nicolas Sarkozy, who is a lapdog of the Anglo-American banking establishment. I'm not saying Bilderberg Group member Kahn's a good guy. He's a globalist, one-worlder as well. But it is suspicious that normally, you know, Al Gore, any of these guys can get away with murder. Bill Clinton, Juanita Broderick, all of it. But then magically this happens. So the whole thing is suspicious. And Paul Craig Roberts has an article, The Strauss-Kahn Frame-Up, the American Police State Strides Forward. So we'll cover that first, then get his take on the whole OBL hoax. He very eloquently, a few weeks ago with Paul Watson, broke down some of the glaring issues. Dr. Paul Craig Roberts, thank you for joining us today.
Hello, Alex.
Good to have you with us. Let's get into the Dominique Strauss-Kahn. You seem pretty convinced here that there's some dirty shenanigans going on.
Well, I am, because from the very beginning, the police, instead of doing as they are required to do and give a defendant the presumption of innocence, immediately began painting a picture of a guilty man. So from the very first announcement, the police have been trying to paint his guilt all over him, and it continues that way. And so when you see that, it's pretty much a giveaway that they intend to convict him. And there's too many things wrong with the story. And one of the most astounding things is that the way they found him is that when he got to the airport, he realized he had left his cell phone and called the hotel and said, I'm at John F. Kennedy Airport, and I think I've left my cell phone, and would you see if you can retrieve it? Now, that doesn't go with the picture that the police put out of a rapist fleeing his crime and heading out of the country. And that was also the reason he was denied bail. The judge said, oh, he was fleeing the scene and had run on a plane, and we caught him just in the nick of time. Well, they didn't catch him. He caught he called in and reported where he was. So it doesn't really make much sense that if you were fleeing from a crime scene, that you would then call the scene of the crime and tell them where you are. So there are just so many things about it. Now, we do know that, that he was expected to be able to defeat Nicolas Sarkozy for the presidency of France in this upcoming election, and that Sarkozy is America's guy. We put him in there. It was American money and influence, and that another black mark against Strauss-Kahn is that he let the IMF issue a report recently that said that within 5 years, China would have surpassed the United States as the world's leading economic power. And now this hurts Washington's prestige and hurts its ability to bully people. Other people say, well, if we can hold out long enough, they'll lose their some of their power. And so this also is a mark against him. And then I think a third mark is that he had scared the bankers, because he speaks of the need to re-regulate the banking system, which is run amok. And he has also indicated that he was sympathetic with Joseph Stiglitz's view that the IMF should cease to be a weapon that the rich use against the poor, and that the kind of austerity programs that are imposed on poor people, as in Greece today, Ireland today, in order to bail out Wall Street, that just really doesn't fly. And so he had a whole number then of powerful enemies, and had predicted prior to his departure for the United States that he thought Sarkozy would set him up with a rape charge. Now, he didn't mean in America, in an American hotel. He was thinking in France that he would be presented with this type of smear in order to reduce his standing in the polls.
Yes, sir. Let me add a caveat there. I have BBC, Daily Mail, all the big French papers. He was on record saying they could set me up in a car park claiming I raped a woman, but that's not even the big key. I want you to speak to that. And then this, they admit that a campaign staffer of Sarkozy put out the tweet that he had been grabbed for raping this woman before it was even in the news, yes, and before he was even arrested. And now they backtrack and said, well, we got a call from one of our operatives in the hotel. And it went further. The head spin doctor, and this is admitted, right, admits for Sarkozy, the big national Karl Rove over there, the equivalent of Karl Rove admits that he put this out before it was even known. So whether he did it or not, or maybe she enticed, or who knows, this is all red-handed that this was an intelligence operation.
Yes, I think that you're right. I cited that report from the Daily Mail and from Liberation in my column. And it is clear that that is admitted. Somehow the operative for Sarkozy against Strauss-Kahn knew before the New York police made the announcement. So that, of course, is more giveaway. So I think, I think he'll have a hard time getting out of it, because if you look around, the left wing will want to get him because he's a rich white guy, and the feminists will want to get him because they know that all men are always raping women, and there are just so many people that getting him is emotional satisfaction. It goes along with their agendas and emotional needs. And he's going to have a hard time, and it's quite clear too. To add to your point, Alex, that if he was actually serving the system, they wouldn't touch him. He would actually be able to rape somebody in broad daylight and get away with it in front of witnesses. So clearly, he was seen as a threat, and just like Elliot Spitzer, and was eliminated. He was a threat to not just the banks, but I mentioned to a wide variety of powerful interests. And the fact that such a powerful figure was destroyed indicates that he was seen as a threat, not as a servant of the system.
It definitely shows that there's a rift between the IMF and World Bank. Definitely illustrates that there is a fight going on right now. And we saw Merkel last year call the big private banks like JP Morgan and others, crooks. They're trying to implode Europe. They're trying to implode the United States. They're completely predatory. I don't think at the end of the day, Dominique Strauss-Kahn is an angel. But at the same time, clearly some branches of the ruling class realize that this predatory imploding of economies to consolidate them will end up killing the goose that lays the golden eggs.
Yeah, that's it. Of course, there's no doubt that the man is randy and likes the companionship of women, and that, of course, is also being used against him. And I think that even among the Soviet Communist Party, a social conscience developed among some members, leading to reforms and collapse. And so I wouldn't be surprised that there are people in the IMF who've had enough of squeezing and trampling the poor. At some point, some people are affected by that and reform themselves. And there is perhaps a struggle going on in the IMF, but I suspect that's now over. Because it's not just the arrest, it's the way he is pronounced to be guilty before any evidence is in. I mean, no one's seen the maid. we assume she exists. And who else wants to take on that role and be faced with similar treatment? So it's a huge warning shot to reformers to shut up and get back in line, or you'll be next.
Expanding on that, it certainly sends a message across the board, and we dovetail it with the Indiana Supreme Court ruling last week, and I read the judge's statement in the winning ruling, saying police can now enter your home for any reason, including no reason at all. That's a quote. And the U.S. Supreme Court said they can listen at your door. Do they hear sounds that could be hiding drugs, ruffling, or any sounds at all, they can come in without warrants. And they're now announcing, yes, we're going to continue to expand sneak and peeks and non-terror related, and that now even local jurisdictions are using it outside of the feds. I mean, it's just a complete abolition of everything. And you see whether Khan is guilty or innocent. If he's not given due process, he has to be set free. Better 10 guilty men go free than one innocent man go to prison. That's always been the maxim of liberty and common sense. And there is a war, a conscious war. I have an Indiana sheriff saying we're now going to do door-to-door gun searches of homes. We no longer need warrants. That they're announcing their avarice-filled, tyrant-filled desire to run wild over us, Dr. Roberts.
Yes, the Fourth Amendment's gone. In fact, look, Alex, this is the subject of my book, The Tyranny of Good Intentions, that went through 2 editions and a number of printings, that we've lost the protection of law. The constitutional amendments that can comprise the Bill of Rights are simply eroded. And I'm sure you're aware that of the recent reports from Tennessee television stations about the police in Tennessee stopping traffic on I-40 and taking everybody's money on the grounds that if you have cash, it's an indication that you just sold drugs, and that's drug money. And the reports are that the various police jurisdictions are almost coming to blows between themselves over who gets to disrupt this traffic and take the money. And one of the small jurisdictions has already seized $1 million from motorists. And they go out there and just have blanket traffic stops and go through people's wallets, take their money. This is happening right now. And I can remember in my book, I tell the case of when this was happening in Florida a number of years ago. So you're right, the police, there's really no restrictions any longer on police, what they do. They're unaccountable. And there's no real inclination to hold them accountable. The conservative war on crime has unleashed police and created a monster. And it's very interesting that the Supreme Court, by an 8-to-1 vote, gave even more power to the police, powers that you just described, because they can say, oh, we heard somebody flushing the toilet, so that meant the drugs were going down the toilet, so we had the right to bust in. So there's no longer any constraints, and people just seem to be at ease with this. They don't seem to be.
And now they're announcing the austerity. In Europe, they're going after private pension funds, 100% your money. They're now telling us to get rid of and cut the public pension funds here, but don't stop any of the banker bailouts or corporate welfare. We're going into austerity. The ruling class knows they've committed all these crimes, and they've decided to protect themselves and continue on by consciously setting up a police state. How do we counter this?
I don't really know, Alex. But you're certainly right. That's what's happening. Look, can you remember a decade or two back, the junk bond king, Michael Milken?
Yeah.
Well, he had done absolutely nothing, though everyone thinks he was convicted of insider trading. That's false. That was a rumor that Giuliani put out.
Stay there, Dr. Roberts. We're going to come right back and finish that story. Get a brief update on the latest bin Laden fables. They've now admitted just the whole story's fake up one side and down the other. But so what? From the grave, he says he agrees with the revolutions in the Middle East that are U.S. and funded. Amazing. We'll be right back with Dr. Paul Craig Roberts. Stay with us. Look, folks, if you're amazed by our decline into absolute despotism, don't be. The founders pointed it out. It's historical fact. Tyranny is the norm. And we're going to get a particularly nasty version of tyranny because we're so naive, because we're Americans and it can't happen here. I mean, the police don't secretly all over the country take $100, $1,000 out of your wallet. Just no drugs, no arrest. They publicly do it. Public schools don't watch kids at home over their government laptops in the shower or in the bed. Secretly, they brag about it. The TSA doesn't secretly stick their hands down your child's pants. They do it publicly. So there's an open breaking of the will happening, but I see a huge awakening happening, and tyranny will just continue until it finally collapses. Dr. Roberts, in closing, always great to have you. Appreciate your wonderful articles. You write for Infowars.com and PrisonPundit.com and thousands of other great sites out there. And your tireless dedication to liberty. I was on vacation for a couple of days, but listening to you while on the Texas beach with Paul Watson, just laying out the bin Laden situation. We've only got about 3 minutes left. Any other points on that subject?
Yes, Alex, you know, a very important point is that there's been no White House ceremony with the president conveying medals on these heroic SEALs who captured and killed the world's most dangerous man. Now, what president would miss a public relations opportunity like that? It's just unbelievable.
Or the body, or throwing it in the ocean, or a photo.
Yes, of course. But we've already covered that and mentioned that. But this is something I've not seen anyone say anything about, and I didn't stick it in my columns. But surely, with the SEALs' triumphant return, they would have been awarded medals in the White House by the president before a national TV audience.
And they would have retired that group of SEALs. They say, well, they're so secretive in their missions, you can't see them. He would have at least had the secret ceremony with them being brought in and then coming out and thanking them. Oh, it's unbelievable.
Listen, they wouldn't, he would sacrifice the SEALs for the publicity.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Now, some people say, oh, well, they had to hide the SEALs because these brave men would be marked by Al-Qaeda and terminated. Really, I really believe that Al-Qaeda is going to penetrate the bases and get the SEALs. But I think that is another giveaway. Now, you may know as well that recently the Pakistani news agency, the equivalent to the BBC in Pakistan, put out a news report from eyewitnesses whom they identified and had speaking on camera that there were 3 helicopters, only one landed. And 12 people got out, went in the house, came back, and the people got in the helicopter, and as it lifted off, it exploded, and every man was killed. There were dead bodies everywhere, pieces of bodies.
And that's exactly how they operate. That's exactly what they would do. Send the SEALs out on a drill, blow it up, and then say they got bin Laden. I mean, of course they're going to kill the witnesses. I mean, that's the only way that they operate. That's standard.
Well, you know, it's hard to know what's true and what's not true. It's hard to know why the Pakistan would put out a false story like that. We've got no way of knowing. But what we do know is that nobody in the American media asked about it or looked into it or said, could anything like this have happened? Is this the reason there's no body? Is this the reason there are no SEALs getting medals? I mean, what? So who knows? But there's so many things that we just overlook. There's so much potential evidence, different explanations, and they never even get into the public's consciousness.
Now, we're told just believe whatever government tells you, even though they have a history of congenital lying. Paul Craig Roberts, thank you so much for spending time with us. Look forward to speaking to you in the near future.
Same here, Alex.
We'll be right back with Dr. Steve Pachinik on the other side. Stay with us.